Jeremy Carmichael, a self-made millionaire with a mane of silver hair and a steely gaze, had clawed his way to the top. He built his empire, Carmichael Industries, from the ground up, brick by ruthless brick. Twice divorced, Jeremy wasn't a man for sentimentality. His prenuptial agreements were legendary, ironclad, and watertight. His latest conquest, Tina, was a vision in blonde. At 25, she was half his age, with a penchant for designer labels and a smile that could charm the birds out of the trees. Jeremy, at 50, found himself inexplicably drawn to her youthful vibrancy. Maybe it was a midlife crisis, or perhaps a genuine flicker of affection. Jeremy himself couldn't quite say. Tina, on the other hand, had her sights set firmly on Jeremy's bulging bank account. Her own background was a far cry from the champagne lifestyle she craved. Raised by a single mother who struggled to make ends meet, Tina had always dreamt of a life of luxury. Jeremy, with his prenup in place, seemed like the perfect ticket to that world. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a lavish wedding. Tina, resplendent in white lace, beamed next to a slightly bemused Jeremy. The prenup, a document as thick as a phone book, was signed with a flourish by Tina, who barely skimmed the legalese. Jeremy, a master negotiator, had ensured it protected his children, Sarah and Michael, from his previous marriage. They were to inherit 90% of his wealth upon his death. Tina, however, would be handsomely compensated with a hefty life insurance payout. The first few months of their marriage were a blissful blur of five-star vacations and designer shopping sprees. Jeremy, basking in Tina's youthful energy, showered her with extravagant gifts. But as the novelty wore off, cracks began to appear in their facade. Jeremy, a workaholic, found himself increasingly frustrated by Tina's frivolous demands. Tina, bored with the confines of their mansion, craved the social whirl that Jeremy, with his busy schedule, couldn't provide. One evening, Jeremy returned home late from a business dinner. He found Tina in the kitchen, meticulously stirring a steaming cup of tea. "Hey there, beautiful," Jeremy said, placing a kiss on her forehead. "Long day?" "The usual," Tina replied, her voice laced with a hint of annoyance. "Just me, here in this gilded cage while you have all the fun." Jeremy sighed, the weight of his empire suddenly pressing down on him. "It's not fun, Tina. It's responsibility. Responsibility that comes with a hefty price tag," Tina countered, her eyes glinting. "A price tag I seem to be sharing, but not reaping the full benefits of." Jeremy frowned, a flicker of suspicion crossing his mind. He knew Tina was materialistic, but this sudden shift in attitude was unsettling. He brushed it aside, attributing it to boredom. Over the next few weeks, Jeremy noticed a subtle change in his health. He felt lethargic, easily fatigued. He dismissed it as stress, popping over-the-counter pills to keep himself going. But the fatigue persisted, and a dull ache settled in his stomach. One morning, after a particularly agonizing bout of nausea, Jeremy stumbled into the kitchen, his face pale. Tina, perched at the breakfast bar, looked up with a practiced concern. "Jeremy, you look awful. Are you all right?" she asked, her voice dripping with feigned worry. "I don't feel good," Jeremy mumbled, slumping into a chair. He reached for his usual cup of coffee, but Tina beat him to it. "Here, have some tea instead," she said, her smile a little too eager. "It'll settle your stomach." Jeremy, too weak to argue, took a sip. The tea tasted bitter, strangely metallic. He wrinkled his nose in disgust. "What is this? It tastes strange," he croaked, setting the cup down with a clatter. Tina's smile faltered for a brief moment. Then she regained her composure. "Just a special herbal blend I found. Supposed to be good for digestion." Jeremy eyed her suspiciously. The metallic taste lingered on his tongue, a prickling sensation spreading through his body. Panic clawed at his throat. "Tina," he started, but the words died in his throat. His vision blurred, the room tilting at an alarming angle. He slumped forward, gasping for breath. Tina watched with a cold detachment as Jeremy writhed on the floor, his face contorted in pain. Fear momentarily flickered across her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a steely resolve. She took the cup, rinsed it out, and placed it on the shelf before continuing with her plan. "Help! Help!" she screamed, her voice laced with manufactured hysteria. The household staff rushed in. The ensuing chaos was orchestrated by Tina. Shrill cries for an ambulance filled the air as the bewildered staff surrounded Jeremy's prone body. Tina, her face streaked with tears, insisted that Jeremy seemed fine, and then had a sudden attack out of nowhere. At the hospital, the doctors worked frantically to save Jeremy. Tests revealed traces of a rare, highly toxic substance in his system. The police, alerted by the hospital based on the unusual symptoms, arrived to question Tina. Initially, Tina stuck to her story, claiming ignorance about what happened. However, the seasoned investigator named Miller immediately began digging into their financial situation and grew suspicious of Tina's story. He learned about the ironclad prenup and the hefty life insurance policy that would land in Tina's lap upon Jeremy's death. "Mrs. Carmichael," Detective Miller said, his voice calm but firm, "this whole situation seems suspicious, don't you think?" Tina, determined to get her share of Jeremy's wealth, stuck to her guns, refusing to falter even under the detective's sharp gaze. Meanwhile, Jeremy, clinging to life, managed to whisper a single word to his eldest daughter, Sarah, who had rushed to the hospital upon hearing the news. "Tina," he rasped, his voice weak but filled with accusation. Sarah, already suspicious of her stepmother's extravagant spending habits and sudden shift in attitude, relayed her father's words to the detective. When Jeremy's doctors got the more extensive test results back, they had no doubt left that someone had been poisoning him for quite some time. With this new piece of information, the police delved into Tina's past with renewed vigor. They also got a search warrant for Jeremy's home and went back, looking for evidence. By this time, however, the home staff had already washed all the dishes and cups repeatedly, so the police couldn't find any traces of poison. They did, however, unearth an acquaintance from Tina's past, a shady character with a rap sheet for petty theft, who had access to rare poisons. Under pressure, the acquaintance cracked, revealing that Tina had approached him with a proposition to eliminate Jeremy for a hefty sum of money. Confronted with this new evidence and the incriminating testimony from the hospital, Tina's carefully crafted lies started unraveling like a cheap sweater. A couple of days later, Tina finally broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed to the attempted murder, her greed and desperation driving her to the unthinkable. Luckily for Jeremy, Tina couldn't keep her cool long enough. If only she had been more patient and continued to slowly poison her husband, she would probably have gotten away with murder. But in her attempt to speed up the process, she doubled the dose, which led to Jeremy's attack instead of a steady decline in his health, and also left the traceable amounts of poison in his blood. The news of Tina's arrest caused a media frenzy. The once glamorous socialite became a pariah, her carefully crafted image shattered. Jeremy, after weeks of intensive care, miraculously recovered. The ordeal had left him shaken, his trust in people irrevocably damaged. Left with nothing, Tina couldn't even afford a good lawyer, so the legal battle that followed was swift and brutal. She was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Jeremy, forever changed by the experience, amended his will. He ensured his children would inherit a controlling share of Carmichael Industries, while also establishing a trust fund for Sarah and Michael to access upon his death. He remained wary of romantic entanglements, focusing on rebuilding his life and strengthening his bond with his children. Years passed, and Jeremy, now sporting a full beard of salt and pepper, found solace in philanthropy. He used his vast wealth to fund medical research and support organizations for victims of domestic abuse,